now an election broadcast on behalf of the Conservative Party.
Hello, I'm Theresa May, and tonight I want to talk to you about an important choice. But I also want to tell you the truth about our nation, where exactly we are headed, and how best to brace yourself for impact when we eventually get there. But first, let's remind ourselves of how we got here. In 2010, we were given a mandate not just to govern over you, but also to govern over the Liberal Democrats, which was good news for us and great news for our country. Unfortunately, we soon discovered that what we had inherited from Labour was a nation in turmoil. It was worse than even our most fevered dreams would allow us to believe. We inherited a blasted wasteland full of shattered dreams and defiled opportunities. The country was on its tattered knees, wearing arseless pants. The first thing we had to do was tackle the economy. Borrowing, under Labour, was at an all-time high. We knew we could do better than that, and we did. From a disastrously high national debt figure of £700 billion back in 2010, thanks to 5 years or so of prudence and careful wealth transference, we managed to work that figure up to a far more manageable figure of £1,920 billion by 2015, which sounds on the surface like an almost trebling of the debt on paper, but in real adjusted terms it is actually half the figure that we inherited from Labour, especially taking into account years of spiteful austerity and a necessary second round of wealth transference posing as quantitative easing. So let's look at what we've achieved in this time. We have successfully managed in a relatively short period to double patient waiting times in the NHS. Doubled, soon to be tripled. But rest assured, we are not sitting on our laurels. With the economy, with the NHS, with difficult Brexit negotiations. My Brexit Minister, David Davis, has worked diligently to avoid any genuine plan of action, and he continues to do so 2 hours a day, 3 days a week. But that's enough of us. Let's talk about you. You, the great British public. Nowadays, happiness indicators show the country is far happier and more at ease with itself than, say, it was in the early 1920s. Global war is down, housing is solid, and growth figures indicate a sure and steady decline. But don't take my word for it. I spoke to one of you earlier today. Clive is a small business blogger and under manager for a community post office cyber cafe. He also works as an Uber cab driver and hopes to get back into teaching at some point. Here's what he said to my assistant. Listen, people think that things are bad now. Well, I for one haven't forgotten what the winter of discomfort was like. Britain was in tatters. Dennis Healey crawling on his hands and knees to the MFI. Bodies piled high in Leicester Square, all thanks to Jeremy Corbyn and his Trotskyite trade union cronies. Plus, looking back, I only had one job back then, a primary school teacher. Now I've got 3 jobs. And with all those jobs I can pick the hours to suit me. It's perfect. And another thing, they come in for a lot of criticism, but a so-called 0 hours contract actually gives me flexibility. Plus, if my life takes another downturn, or my landlord puts up the rent, or whatever, there's always the cushion of my local government food bank. Under the Conservative government, food bank usage has rocketed, so people no longer have to go hungry and die. And if I fall ill, well, the NHS should still be around for another 5 to 10 years at most. So yes, I'd say things are definitely better nowadays. And hopefully now, post-Brexit, all the immigrants and refugees swarming in will put strength, stability, and flexibility in the workplace. Choice in which schools you can claw your children into. Choice as to where you live and what news stations you watch. Pride in a country that doesn't want to be dictated to about human rights or child poverty levels. Opportunity, hiving off vast sections of the National Health Service to American healthcare providers or Virgin Care. Unabashed pride in our country and its great institutions, which fetch top price on the open market. Just look at what we've achieved in these past few years. We successfully sold off our profitable stake in Eurostar. We negotiated a deal which saw half the national grid sold off to Qatar and China. Our beloved Royal Mail sold off wholesale thanks to the then Chancellor's contacts and close family relations. All of this in order to swell the national debt, which keeps growing and growing year upon year under our governance. That's what we mean when we say growth and opportunity. We opened up our gross domestic product to include emerging markets like people trafficking, drug dealing, gun running and prostitution. This kind of entrepreneurialism is what makes this country great and our economy stable. Cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia so that they may fight the threat of terrorism by raining hell upon a civilian population. Jeremy Corbyn would have us stop these kind of sales, and that could spell disaster for the arms industry, the only remaining industry we have yet to outsource. He also balks at the idea of dropping nuclear bombs on civilian populations. But I ask you this, how can we protect ourselves without eviscerating hundreds of thousands of innocents? Strength, stability. To foreign investors we say, Britain is here. We are open for business and the price is right. So come over and buy out what's left of our ever-declining manufacturing base. Because that's what a conservative Britain is all about. Strong, stable and up for sale. So come June the whatever, I say to you, I probably won't meet you face to face in the run-up to this general election. I probably won't meet anyone face to face in the run-up to this general election, apart from a handful of miserable-faced party faithful. And that is why I've taken the time to record this lazily scripted and hastily contrived broadcast. Arrogance. So I simply ask you to do this. Stay alive. Uncritically absorb what the compliant mainstream media has to tell you. Do not question or think independently. And most of all, imagine this. A boot stamping on a human face. Forever. Be that face. Be that face on election day and vote Conservative.
The Conservative Party are currently under investigation by numerous separate police forces regarding previous electoral fraud. The Conservative Party would like to assert that this is not the reason for the snap election.